Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся Навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Platforms such as UA Weapons and Jomini W on Twitter and the Enforcer channel allowed people around the world to follow the war in a depth and a way that had never happened before. Retired General David Petraeus.
Yes. The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello everyone, I am the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 718 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And if you're not in the USA, tonight is Super Bowl night, and we forgot all about that. So I'll tell you what, it's going to be a small audience tonight. But guess what? We've already raised $763. Hey, let's go!
Oh, let's get it, baby! And of course, tonight is the Super Bowl, baby! Of course, we don't watch the Super Bowl because we, are trying to make sure to support Ukraine during a war. Other channels out there, though, they are not only watching the Super Bowl, but they're smoking bowls. really shows you where the priorities lie. But beyond that, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and we have some pretty interesting stuff to share with y'all tonight. Of course, before we get to that, though, tonight's fundraiser is for the Revived Soldiers of Ukraine. It is an amazing nonprofit that has been helping to save the lives of Ukrainian soldiers and get them through rehabilitation for years at this point. Founded in 2017, they operate out of the Bucha Hospital European area and have been doing unbelievably incredible work. We realized after we went live that the $3,000 fundraiser goal that we had was most likely never going to be reached tonight because we have, at this point, about half of the viewership that we normally would have because of the Super Bowl. So we've actually lowered the fundraiser goal down to $1,500. And then next Sunday, it'll of course go back up to the normal $3,000 goal. But beyond that, I hope that everyone does support the fundraiser because while the Super Bowl is going on, there is still a war going on over in Ukraine. There are hundreds of Ukrainian soldiers fighting and dying sometimes to make sure to defend Ukraine and the rest of the Western world, and supporting them and helping them out is as important as it ever has been. Every single day is a vital day in Ukraine, and every little bit of support that can reach the Ukrainians and help them out is helping them to secure their way to victory just a little bit more. Of course,
I gotta tell you what, I would much rather be here on fundraiser night on a Sunday on the channel than watching the Super Bowl. Because to be honest with you, I've never been much into football. And also, I see a lot of people in the chat, probably from Europe, that are saying this. They're like, what is Super Bowl night and why is it such a big deal? In America, it's like life, especially in Alabama, where we're from. It's more than life. It's actually like a cult. But it's very serious, and people like go over to other people's houses and stuff. It's almost like a holiday almost.
Yeah, it is almost a holiday, and I hope we were able to share with y'all a small piece of American culture that persists to this day and has ended up affecting our channel viewership in a way that we didn't expect. Because, like, the thing is that tonight when we ran the stream, we saw that half of the people at a certain point in time, because the control room tells us how many people are on, and then we compare that usually to how many people were on the night before, and we saw it was half of everyone that was on last night. We went, wait, what the hell's going on? And then Matthew went, oh, it's the Super Bowl. And then we both went, oh, yep. We were like, half of the Lee Spring Army is not showing up.
That explains why nobody else is on tonight.
Yeah, that explains it, because we were all like, the crackheads aren't on, everyone else isn't on. We were like, what in the world's going on here? We were hoping to have another hit piece put out on us today, but it appears that they are apparently being inebriated with drugs and alcohol and then watching some game or something like that. Well, John Albrecht ain't playing no games because he threw in $100.
And guess what, Enforcer, can we do it a little bit different tonight since it's such an unusual night? We got such a small audience here tonight. It's like a very, very intimate audience tonight because we got so little people on here. Can we call off our top donors right now that have already thrown in big chunks?
Yeah, throw them out.
So the biggest one of the night thus far is from DCC Prime 1, who threw in that $350 donation at the beginning of the stream, and that was massive. And the DCC is always coming through big league on the Sunday night fundraisers, so huge shout out for that. Also, a huge shout out to John Albrecht, who threw in that 100 just a moment ago, also massive. We also have a 54 from Paramecium 13, as well as a 50 from Matt Shear, some guy called the Enforcer, who lurks around here quite a bit. And then we have a 50 from Greg Carrier, David Kuhn, and also Margaret Hemsley, who just threw in that 50. And then we got a 100 from Hal Rose, and damn, we are reaching that goal fast tonight.
A 250 from Nicholas Condor. I mean, absolutely slaughtering it early on. We were up to $1,350 of the $1,500 goal in 17 minutes. So we're about to reach goal early. I mean, oh my lord. But still, moving on from that, I got to get y'all to the actual news tonight. And thank you to everyone who's already supported the fundraiser this early on. Y'all pretty much already almost gotten over our goal for the night. And that is truly, absolutely incredible. But moving on from that, also really quickly, I just got to say this. Usually there is a lot of pressure on me and Enforcer Matt to make sure that this show runs very smooth and very streamlined almost every single night of the week, because usually it is game time. We want to make sure that people are interested and involved in the war and being here for these Sunday fundraisers. But considering that it is the Super Bowl day, Super Bowl night, and people are still watching the Super Bowl because apparently it's going into the overtime or whatever, we are going to just be running this stream however it runs tonight. We're going to be probably cutting out a lot, joking, probably screaming a lot too. So, you know, if you want, make sure to just know that in advance. It's going to be a pretty screamy night, so turn your audio down a little bit so you don't get your eardrums blasted, because we're going to be going ham.
And guess what? We're only about $70 away from hitting our goal. We're getting so close, so quick.
No, man, this is crazy, man. I'm telling you what. But moving on into our actual news of the night, I'm taking y'all down to the city of Odessa, because we got to see that the Ukrainians were able to use a brand new kind of air defense system today to shoot down an incoming Shahed drone. And so let me show y'all this real quick. We don't know what system this was. It was all blurred out. It looks kind of similar to some other air defense systems we've seen, but nobody could really extrapolate or figure out what kind of a missile or object this was that ended up intercepting and shooting down the Shahed 236, the jet-powered version of the drone. But we just hit the goal! Let's get it, baby! I love it. I love to see it.
That's what I'm talking about.
We've done it.
We hit the goal fast tonight, even though I know it's low tonight because we had to lower it down because of the low viewership because of the Super Bowl. But that was extremely fast, even for that goal. That was, what was that, less than 5 or 10 minutes or something?
Yeah, that
actually is a record.
That was fast. That was real fast. And this Shahed 236 got shot down pretty fast too. Man, listen to that music. You know what, y'all? I'm actually going to take I'm going to possibly take the hit tonight. I'm just going to play most of the audio, unless if it's like super copyrighted, like an AC/DC song or, you know, that kind of a level. If it sounds like just some generic music, I'm going to let it play tonight. It's going to be a rare exception because this stream will probably be copyrighted, and if y'all ever watch it tomorrow, there's going to be ads on it. But I'm going to let the music play tonight. And when you hear the system fire, and when you see the missile on its way, hitting right at the back and knocking it out. Love it. We see it impact right there. And there it goes, down to the ground. It's got a little bit of a death wobble like a Ford, and then the video clip ends. But still.
And also, by the way, I actually saw this video and I posted it in my Short War summary earlier today. And I did some research, and, you know, believe it or not, I actually came to a pretty decently solid conclusion what weapon that might have been. I suspect that was the L3 Harris Vampire, and I actually went over and pulled up the website on it earlier as well to show you all that system, and it looked like maybe that was one of the first uses we've seen of it, or at least one of the rare cases I've seen.
Now, wouldn't that be something if that was the case? Wouldn't that be? Look at that. Here is the L3 Harris Vampire. What's really funny, Matthew, is that I actually have a friend. You don't know him, but I know him because they're my friend, you know. But they actually just got a job offer from L3 Harris. Pretty cool. But beyond that,
very cool. That's a pretty good job, I'd imagine.
Oh yeah, solid job. But nevertheless, this may be the system, like Matthew was saying. He actually knows a little bit more about it than me because he did most of the research on this topic today. But still, really interesting to see a possible brand new air defense system at work, and hopefully it will be defending the skies of Ukraine incredibly well. Speaking of which, it appears that the Moldovans may have actually been stricken today by the Russians, as Moldovan authorities found the remains of a Shahed 136 that had crashed and possibly even exploded on the territory of Moldova. It appears that they're not trying to make a serious situation out of this, but of course it is a violation of a nation's sovereign border, a lot like what we saw in Romania, which was also a very serious situation. Aw, man, Romania. Aw, man. No disrespect to our Romanian viewers. We love Romania. But moving on from that and out of Moldova, this brings us up to Bryansk, because while a Russian drone landed in Moldova, we also got to see that up in the area of the Bryansk Oblast, Russian authorities are examining this new drone that has ended up crashing in Russian territory, shot down or crashed, one or the other, but they have never seen anything like it. And I'm not going to lie, we've never seen anything like it either. This may be an entirely new drone design from Ukraine, because it looks kind of like an RC plane a little bit.
It does. It's almost like one of those ducted fan jet things that we used to want as kids.
Man, I still want one of those things. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's why we're to fly it. That's the only thing. You got to have like a huge field to fly it in.
Yeah, it's true, and there's no big fields in Alabama. But beyond that, still, really interesting to see one of these things. We really have no idea any additional information about this thing, what it is, what kind of explosive yield it had, what's its range, its top speed. We know absolutely none of that. But still, it is pretty interesting to see This odd drone being captured by the Russians, although it did crash and it's in multiple pieces. But moving on from that, and into our next little bit of news, while the Russians are continuing to deal with skyrocketing casualty rates inside of Ukraine, it also appears that the Russians have a critical shortage of medical staff due to the partial mobilization and the fear of the Russian public, leading to a lot of them exodusing and going to other places. From what we've heard from the British Ministry of Defense, apparently 2% of all doctors in the Russian Federation had left the country by September of 2022, meaning that at this point, now it's becoming a critical situation in Russia that they're missing a lot of manpower, doctors, and staff. And going off of that, this may start to really pose some severe issues for Russian forces, considering the incredibly high casualty rates they're taking at the moment. There may not be enough medical treatment to deal with all of them, and some of them may end up dying from infections or a lack of proper treatment. Once again, increasingly rising the amount of fatalities that are being sustained by the Russians so far in the war. But moving on from this little bit of news in the area of Russia, and moving us on back into Ukraine, we have some really good news to add on to what we saw in Odessa. Up in the area of Kyiv, we got a little air defense report today. Out of the 45 Shaheds that were fired into Ukrainian territory overnight, 40 of them were shot down. A very high interception rate, meaning that only 5 Shaheds made it through the air defense perimeters in Ukraine and made it to their targets. That means that if we were to do some math, which I know many of y'all are shaking your boots because I always do this badly, but if we were to do the math, that means that the Ukrainians had an 89% interception rate of all incoming Russian Shaheds overnight. A very good success rate, and the one that really everyone's always looking for. Happy to see, and good to know. Moving on out of that news and on into the rest of the news that we have for tonight, and I gotta tell y'all, I don't know what it is, but trying to go about this in a much more relaxed way is very hard for me to get into like deep analysis of anything for some reason. Like, it's really hard for me mentally. Mentally, it really is.
I was just sitting here thinking it feels so much lighter, even though, all we see is numbers on our end in the live chat. So we don't get to see like a crowd like in a stadium or anything like that. But it like feels low pressure compared to usual.
I'm not gonna lie, it really does, because to let y'all know this, because like Matthew says, he only sees a number. I actually visualize all of our viewers in an auditorium, like when we're running the show. That's what I pretty much think of it as. And what's
I can do that.
Oh yeah, I always do, man. That's why I'm always making sure to keep things on point and try and make sure it's as good as it can be. Because I'm like, what if I did this in front of a live audience? Like, would I feel like an idiot? But beyond that. One thing that's actually shocking is that most of the time, the Lee Spring Army's live audience is so big that we would actually fill every single auditorium in the United States except for 2. And those are the 2 largest ones. I think they can hold like 12 or 15,000 people each. So, that's something that I always think about when running the stream. And tonight, the pressure is not on that heavily, and also,
even though we still got 3,000 people watching, though, it's still a pretty high amount, actually, if you really think about it.
Man, a hot dog salesman could only dream of numbers like these.
I'm telling you, man.
I'm telling you. But still, I'm happy to have all 3,000 of y'all that are on live right here tonight. It's just that I've got to be honest with y'all. Operating at like 7,000 to 6,000 live viewers on, and it's only 3 tonight. It feels like a lot of pressure's off of me. It actually feels really nice, but at the same time, I hate to know that so many people in the LSA aren't here with us tonight, because I bet they would enjoy and love to hear all of the news we have coming out today. But moving on from that and into this first clip, we got to see that the Ukrainians were showing off a brand new Magura drone, a naval drone, kind of like the Sea Babies and all the other naval drones that have been made and developed by Ukraine at this point. We could see another one right here.
Ось, ви бачили, там 5 або 6 човнів таких вразили якраз російський корабель. Насправді є ще кілька компаній, які виробляють схожі продукти. Більше ніж рік ця сфера активно розвивається. Але в цьому році також буде певний такий технологічний стрибок в цьому напрямку, і морських дронів буде ще більше.
Давай скажемо, що навіть тут є одна покращена версія, але ми не можемо її показати з міркувань безпеки.
Ми не можемо показати, але тут є дійсно, скажімо, човен, який є там певною платформою і, скажімо, який готується до нових застосувань з новими сюрпризами.
overall, I mean, you know, beyond. Oh my
Dang.
lord!
I just saw a 500 come in from Heidi
Griesinger.
Griesinger. Jeez, that is the biggest one of the night.
Good lord! That just got us up to $2,500 on the fundraiser.
Damn.
Absolutely
The goal is only
insane.
1,500. It's already 1,000 above. What do you know?
Man, absolutely wild. Wildin'. I love to see it. That is incredible because y'all have already gotten us not only over the fundraiser goal, now we're at another 1,000 over that. Wild. Wild indeed. And I love it. I love it. But anyways, moving on from
That's
that.
crazy. Even the goal never holds the LSA back. Like the LSA like takes it to the moon every single night, no matter if the goal's 1,500 or 5,000 or whatever. It's always consistently thousands above it every single time. It's amazing.
Every single time. You know, Matthew, what that sounded like? That sounded like the North Korean news lady going, "You would not believe it, but the harvests are above the quota." You know, like every single year, the harvests are above quota. But beyond
Hey,
that,
if it means raising more money for Ukraine, I'll sound like the North Korean news lady if I have to. I mean, I'm telling you.
wait, hang on. Let me really sound like the North Korean news lady. Or something like that. But anyways, moving on from that and into our next clip, we actually got to see a tour that the Russians gave us of one of their bunkers. Check it out. This is apparently a very big bunker that the Russians are using. And my lord, it's hot in here, y'all. I think it's hot because I'm excited and screaming a lot. But we can see him looking around, showing us the camo net that they have inside of the bunker, which makes no sense because it's not really like it's camouflaging anything. It's inside the building, but, you know, it's the Russians. What can we say? We can see they have up an Employee of the Month board. And then over here, we can see a green wall. That's where they interrogate the suspect. Well, what the hell is he doing?
What's he doing? What the hell?
Oh, that's just...
You're either trying to blend in or something.
That's just Draco. He's just chilling. What the hell?
Like a Scooby-Doo episode when they like pan past the monster or something. And they're like, "Zoinks, was that the monster?"
Wait, no. Better
Whoa,
yet,
whoa, Raggy, it's the monster.
when... No, I know what that looks like. Hang on. Dude, that right there, literally, I gotta get this. I gotta get this right. Oh, here it is. Okay, hang on. That guy literally looks like this.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. I don't even know what this is from, but that's exactly it.
Dude, it's a meme. It's a classic meme. But nevertheless, that's exactly what he looks like. The same pose and everything. That's actually pretty funny. But we can see him pan it back over. And is that a wood-burning stove? Wow, that's pretty ancient. Anyways.
I have a feeling that Gerasimov's sitting like that guy somewhere at a desk and not moving like that. I have a feeling he's the same way.
Yeah, and the Admiral of the Black Sea Fleet, he's also like that. Let's see here. Here's the green room. Apparently, this is the luggage room.
A lot of shoddy construction going on here, too.
Oh, man. It's nasty looking up in this place. Wait, what did that say? Let's see. It says something. It says something. I can't tell you what it means. And this appears to be the mess hall, if you want to call it that. They got Z's everywhere up in here. Like, what the hell is this? Hey, Matthew, that looks a lot like that crackhead's apartment. You know, like with how this is laid out and everything. Yeah, it looks just like it. It's like filthy and everything.
The newest thing they have in this entire room is the Tupperware over there.
And here's the cafeteria. Or the mess hall, whatever you want to call it.
Man, that's depressing. No wonder the Russians are doing so pitiful because they can't even have a nice little bunker or whatever this is. Like it just conveniently started working as he opened the door.
Wait, hang on, hold up. Dude, that was some North Korean vibes right there. No noise at all. And then he opens the door. Wild.
Little does he know that the cameraman's unaware he's actually drilling his way out.
Actually, this is so that way, you know, if the Kadyriovites show up, you know, there's a certain kind of a ritual that they have, you know, where they do something with the wall. But nevertheless, he's working hard. Pun intended. And when you see them walking on down the hall. What's in behind door number 3? This is a laundry room, apparently. This is where you iron your clothes. Once again, the walls were made of plywood. Oh, nice big mirror.
This is way too neat for Russians. This is way too organized.
They got outlets.
Paperwork in here?
And man, I'm calling cap. They got outlets. That ain't in it. That is not in a real Russian trench at all.
Oh, this is a barber shop, or supposed to be.
Really?
Yeah, there was like clippers on the table down there.
So apparently one Russian got bored and started gnawing on the door right here. Like, look at the... They just started eating it. But we can see them opening up the thing, and apparently this is their shrine, I guess you can call it. Eastern Orthodox kind of a shrine deal. And now we've gotten to the actual barracks themselves where they sleep. Apparently two to each bunk, because these things are wide as hell.
Is there no pad or mattress or anything between the wood and the person?
Nah, man, you sleep on the hard wooden mats.
Yeah.
Dude, you know
That's
what?
a nice mattress they've got there. It's that straight up hardwood.
Dude, it actually looks like they have like some kind of a bedroll thing above it, but I'm pretty sure they just filled all those with the wood shavings from all the carpentry that happened to make this possible. But I mean, not that great of a place, but I guess it counts for something for him. He'll get blown up probably in 2 weeks. But, you know, it looks like the Russians are trying at least a very small amount. But moving on from that little bit of news and into our next one, we also got to see that the Ukrainians are bringing out a brand new kind of a drone. We're going to have to mute this, but it is a tracked flying drone. So the drone can actually land and then travel over ground and then take off again, which is really interesting.
I wonder why you'd want to do that, though.
Maybe, you know, like if you see a Russian trench line, you can kind of like land this thing, crawl past the trench line, and then take back off and go flying away. Really interesting. Like
Russians would have the slowest ever shooters in the world to miss that. Jeez.
Honestly,
they're counting on them being real lame.
Dude, the Russians really are lame, man. Have you seen them? They're like drooling. They're drooling and everything, man. But anyways,
like engineering design with the Russians' incompetence in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, the Russians are stupid. You can't aim for crap. You know, we're just going to make it go like 1 mile an hour. It'll be fine. But speaking of which, Matthew, the Russians really are that lame because the Russians have been taking incredibly high casualties over the past 24 hours.
Man, but they only got one Bobcat, and also the anti-aircraft warfare number is still in the Satan number, so I don't know about that.
Man, that number do be a little odd, though. Beyond
that's
that,
perfect for the Russians. Actually, it's like that's a number the Russians probably like a whole lot.
Dude, you know, that the Russians be sitting there and they be going, look, the amount of aircraft, anti-aircraft weapons we've lost is the amount that the devil likes. The devil liked us already, so nothing new. But beyond that, one Bobcat skid steer was lost. That was it. But on top of that, another 930 Russian soldiers were wiped out over the past 24 hours, along with 14 armored personnel carriers, 13 supply trucks, 12 main battle tanks, 16 artillery pieces, and 22 drones. Overall, today was not that bad of a day, especially in the infantry casualty regard. It's actually been quite good. And getting on up there towards the high numbers, those high figures that everyone really enjoys to see. But we're going to be moving on from that little bit of news here in those location unknowns. And it's time for us to get on into them front lines. But before we do, we actually want to talk to all of y'all. Because I got to ask, what's going on down there in the live chat? Some people are saying, did the chat stop? New drone from Lego. Thanks again, Dad Good. And thank you again to Dad Good. He threw in a 50 earlier. And Tom Exman said, oh, just one. And then Heather Fitzgibbon said, hello, Rob. How's your shoulder? I can't answer that because I'm not Rob. But so many people have been saying so many things. And Matthew, what have you been seeing? And what have you been saying?
All right, so first up, let's call off the top donors since the last time we called them off, because our fundraiser has reached $2,719.
Dang!
And that's well above goal. I can't do the math, but somewhere above 1,000 above goal, which is tremendous. And up first, we have a very generous 500 from Heidi Greisinger that we called off earlier. That has become the highest, not super chat, the highest donation of the night. So huge shout out to Heidi for that. Extremely generous. We also have a 100 from Avdiivka, which is also very generous. Then we have a 50 from Axel K, Gene Kustra, William Cullison, Robert Harrington, Steve Watkins at work. He's still at work. And we have one from Renee Love, Brock Selig, Catherine F., and also Dad Good. And huge shout out and thank you to all of you who have donated tonight, because this fundraiser has actually been very successful, I gotta say. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say thank you to all of y'all once again who've thrown in support tonight, both big and small, because all of y'all have come together to make this fundraiser possible. It's reached nearly $2.7 thousand without even really breaking a sweat. And I gotta say that is truly incredible. Absolutely fantastic. And not only that, it's ensuring that the Lee Spring Army continues to save lives in Ukraine. And oh, by the way, I just wanted to share this with y'all, not to give anyone a false glimmer of hope or maybe put them into a severe depression hearing this, but the Dark Ages are about to be over on this channel. They are getting very close to ending. Right now, this channel is sitting at 159,500 subscribers, which means that we have gained about 2.8 thousand subscribers over the past 2 weeks alone, which is unbelievable, absolutely incredible, and also it's showing
Unprecedented growth, I'm telling you. The Enforcer channel is going to the moon.
And it really is going to the moon, no doubt about it. And also, on top of that, the Lee Spring Army is continuing to stay to our original goals. And there are some people out there, y'all, that we've been hearing about and we've been observing just a little bit, but we don't want to get any kind of brain cancer, so we only look at them for like 5 minutes. But they are absolutely seeing this channel come back from the pit, which is incredible. I gotta say, I love to hear it, love to see it, and of course it is wonderful to know that so many people are continuing to join this amazing channel, the Enforcer channel, and the community that we have, the Lee Spring Army, and continuing to push onwards and upwards towards a Ukrainian victory, which is absolutely incredible and wonderful. Can we get an LSA in the chat for that? Can we? Oh, you cut out, Matthew. All I heard was and then it just cut out. But moving on from that, Matthew, do we have some interesting stuff to cover?
So we do. We do have some interesting stuff to cover. We actually have a poll to go over, which is running right now. And the question is, Russia attacked Moldova with a Shahed drone. And that happened yesterday, and it was reported today. And do you think it was intentional? It's evenly split. Very evenly split, actually. It's 38% said it was an accident, 37% said it was intentional, and 25% said unsure. And in my opinion, I would say that the first time Russia accidentally shot a kamikaze drone into Moldova or Romania, I would say that was maybe an accident. The second time, maybe an accident, maybe not. The third time, we're getting out of the territory of an accident now. And now this time, they've hit Moldova this time, and they've blown up one of their kamikaze drones right there on their territory. In my opinion, it's sort of crossed the line from being an accident to being intentional. You can't have that many accidents and keep claiming an accident over and over and over. That's not the way things work. So in my opinion, I would lean toward it's intentional, but I can't say that with concrete fact because, the Russians being so incompetent, you never know. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say it's most likely an intentional act by the Russians, considering that they brag about how they're accurately able to hit apartment buildings. I'm pretty sure that these are supposed to be indirect threats to Moldova. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And Matthew, I think we have some interesting questions to possibly talk about from the chat.
We do. We have one from Avdiivka Plan who says, was anyone injured in the incident in Moldova today?
And no one was injured in the incident. It apparently hit or exploded into a empty field, kind of like the ones did in Romania. So no one was actually injured or killed in that incident. So I hope that it addresses that very well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our second and last one of the segment goes to Danny V, who says, do you guys know anything about that the Russians are supposedly and allegedly using Starlink 2?
The Russians are supposedly using Starlink. We have heard about that, and we've seen a alleged Starlink system being blown up by the Ukrainians today. But I believe that it's not a standard issue kind of a thing where Starlink is actually providing systems to the Russians. I have a feeling that the systems are probably being bought by shell companies here in the West and then somehow being sent into Russia. A lot like most Western components, electronic and computer components, are ending up in Russia. They're not being directly bought and shipped into Russia. They're actually being bought by shell companies that are posing as legitimate European companies and then shipping that on into Russia from there. So
And that actually is the case, because I actually researched that yesterday, and then today while I was compiling the news for the short war summary, I saw that Elon Musk himself came out and said that SpaceX does not whatsoever sell those Starlink modems to Russia. If they get their hands on them, they're getting their hands on them through third parties, and that's it. And even if they can get the modem, they can't even connect to the SpaceX satellite because they have to have a special code to be able to connect, and they don't have the code, nor do they have the regional access to get on the satellite. So Russia is basically taking pictures of those for no reason. They can't use them. And if they are using them, they must have found some way around it that even SpaceX isn't aware of. So that's what we know so far.
And so with that, I hope that does address your question well, because I think that's about the best that we could try and answer that question under the best of circumstances, which is, in fact, right now. But it's time for us to move on from this question segment. It's time for us to move on into that frontline news that we have in Ukraine. Starting off near the area of the Kupiansk battlefield, we got to see some Ukrainian vehicles driving through mud and snow. Specifically, the British-supplied Spartans.
Oh, not that Andrew Tate song.
Man, look at him go. Look at him go.
What color is your Bugatti?
Dude, oh my lord. That guy is just annoying to me. Like I'm sorry, y'all, if you like him, or if you don't. I'm not going to talk about much about it. I just find the guy annoying, to be honest. Ooh. Yikes, it hit that bump pretty hard. And that thing's kicking up some mud, man.
It really is. Like, that's kind of nasty, actually. You know, bad conditions.
Rough conditions, no doubt about it, Matthew. Really rough. Very rough indeed. But moving on from that and into the area of Krok-Melane, we also got to see a Ukrainian T-64BV just sitting around in the Eastern Front. Take a look at this thing. Is it mean, or is it, this guy kind of looks a little dejected, but is it mean, or is it not? I mean, it's pretty cool looking. But
that guy, go back to that photo for a second. That guy looks like this guy in front of him just told him, "You're not driving the tank, okay?" He said, "Oh, man."
Dude, this guy was like, "Could they please blow away a Russian infantry squad?" "No, you're not blowing away a Russian infantry squad." Aww. That's what this guy looks like. But still, he's probably just, it's probably just a picture taken at a bad time. He was probably like shuffling his feet or something like that. But still, kind of funny. But with that, I see the T-64BVs in operation, and hopefully they're having a good time out there. Hopefully this isn't how the guys are really feeling. Hopefully that was just a quick bad picture. But moving on from that, and out of that area of the battlefield, because not really a lot happened there today. To be honest with y'all, not really a lot happened across the entirety of the front line, except for in Avdiivka. So we're going to be moving a little bit further on down and into the area of Krasnoyarchinsky, where we got to see a supposed Starlink system getting blown away. Oh, we're going to mute that. I don't know what that is, but it sounds really copyrighted. But we can see the grenade sitting there on top of whatever that was, and then blowing it away. That's the end of that clip, but once again showing that the Ukrainians are trying to hit anything that appears to be electronic in nature, making sure that the Russians continue to stay in the Stone Age of technology like they always have been. But moving on from that and down into the area of Bobazna, or more so Pervomaisk, where a lot of Pervomaisk people live, we can see that there are some remains of a blown-up Buk missile system, destroyed a little bit earlier on the war. The Russians were passing by today and decided to take some pictures of it and show us the remains of what this Buk system used to look like. It's the radar system for the Buk. That's what it actually looks like fully deployed. Pretty insane looking, I do say so myself when you really look at that. But it's gone. It's been blown up. There it is right there. Pitiful display. Pitiful display. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next little bit of news, towards the city of Bakhmut itself. There hasn't been a lot going on in Bakhmut today. Of course, pretty interesting to see. And apparently I'm being told that somebody just won the Super Bowl.
KC?
KC, Kentucky Chicken? I thought it was Kentucky Fried Chicken. I love Kentucky Fried Chicken. That stuff be delicious.
If you asked me to tell you who KC was, and my life depended on it, I think you'd have to go ahead and just shoot me now, because I don't think I'd be able to figure that out.
Yeah, I have no. I got to be honest with y'all. I do not really even get into the NFL stuff, so I have no idea who Casey is. I don't even know who in the hell.
Oh, it's the Chiefs. It's some Chiefs. I don't know the first part though.
Huh. Interesting. Well, I guess that's interesting, and the war goes on. The war goes on. Moving on down into Bakhmut, over the past 24 hours, and let me make sure to pull this up here real quick for y'all and show y'all the Ukrainians are actually able to push the Russians back just a little bit right here. But beyond that, not really a lot happened. Moving on to our first clip, we got to see a Ukrainian soldier taking a picture of his damaged M4A1 carbine right here. It appears that it has taken a decent amount of shrapnel damage to the upper receiver. Hefty. But moving on from
damn.
He just logged in. He was like, oh, damn. But moving on from that and into another picture that we got from the Bakhmut area, we got to see an M777 in operation a little bit behind the lines and a soldier just sitting on it. Pick goes hard. Feel free to screenshot. We need that parental advisory, like somewhere up at the top or the bottom or something on this picture, because the pick does go hard.
It does go pretty hard. He looks like he's about to lay down a bar or two.
Man, maybe he is. Maybe he is. Maybe bars will be laid down on, all kinds of Russians, those bars.
You have heard that Ukrainian rap, though, haven't you? Like the real Ukrainian rap? It goes pretty hard.
I have heard that Ukrainian rap, and it do go pretty hard. I ain't going to lie. I'm not even kidding. It actually goes pretty hard. No cap. Bussin' on God, for real.
Ain't gonna lie.
Oh, man.
For real.
But with that, we're going to be moving a little bit further on down the lines and into the city of Avdiivka. I hate to say this because I know many people would love to hear some good news about the city of Avdiivka, and I have to say this before I even say it because, there's a lot of weird, sick people out there who are now indirectly trying to threaten us with death, like openly on their show, so I have to make sure to disclaim this before I even say this. I am no idiot. I'm a pro-Ukrainian, but my frontline analysis will always be unbiased. If the Russians do end up winning somewhere, we will just tell y'all flat out that it looks like they're actually starting to win a battle. And while that is the case, while the Russians do look like they're winning the battle, and I'll show y'all the small movement today, and it was literally a microscopic movement, but actually led to the Russians. At this point, I would say that it's pretty much clear the Ukrainians are certainly going to be withdrawing from Bakhmut here, well, Avdiivka, here really soon. But I'll be explaining what's been going on over the past 24 hours before I even show you all the front line change. So, the Russians have moved into the northeastern end of Avdiivka, and while they're taking unbelievably heavy casualties, and also they're really literally fighting an uphill battle at this point into the city, it does seem as though they have been able to eke forward just enough that they have come into direct line of sight with the highway of life into the city of Avdiivka. Going off of that means that Ukrainian supply is no longer possible because Ukrainian supply vehicles cannot make it into the city safely anymore, and this means, as a result, the Ukrainian forces in Avdiivka are most likely cut off from supplies at this point, and they're going to have to start withdrawing very soon from pretty much the entirety of the city to make sure that they are connected to Ukrainian supply lines and they don't end up possibly being encircled and then being forced into surrendering or taking unbelievably high casualties before surrendering. I'll be showing y'all what's happened over the past 24 hours. It's this right here. This seems like nothing. It really does when you look at it. It is a microscopic movement, but at this point, being this close to the highway, it's actually a pretty concerning move because they are now 194 meters or about 200 yards away from the highway of life. And you can see that the Ukrainian front line now is actually on the highway itself, according to Deep State UA. This is wildly concerning, and I'll try and show y'all this exact spot in Google Earth to give y'all a better idea. Better yet, I'm actually going to switch this over to the normal satellite view and show y'all something. So, apparently this map doesn't have high resolution, but you can see here, this area consists of nothing more than small residential buildings. These may have actually been destroyed by artillery fire, and that means that the Russians are within very easy firing distance of the highway. You don't even really have to adjust at around 200 yards for bullet drop, because bullet drop becomes a thing past about 300 yards. So this is going to be very concerning. Actually, in reality, to try and give you all the best picture of what would happen if a Ukrainian vehicle tried to drive through this area, and there is a clear line of sight to the highway from there, a Ukrainian car is going to be driving down the highway of life right here. It's going to get about to this point. The Russian squad that's here is going to go, hey, look, here they come. And then they're going to start lighting this truck up as it passes with direct rifle fire and machine gun fire. That means that the driver will probably get killed, or the passengers will probably get wounded or killed as well. The vehicle could have its tires blown out, and it could swerve out of control if it's going in high speed, resulting in a crash that'll probably injure or kill all of the remaining occupants of the vehicle. Pretty much meaning that there is no good chance at this point today for Ukrainian resupply to actually make it into Avdiivka. And I see a lot of people coming up with different comments, and I love the optimism. A lot of people are saying, now that Sersky's in charge, this isn't going to slide. They're going to try and manage some kind of a counterattack in this area to push the Russians back up into this area, up into the northeastern suburbs of Avdiivka on the other side of the railroad berm. That may be the case, actually. That may actually be a realistic idea, but still, we don't really know. We don't really know if that is going to be the case. It has been said, and there has been a rumor, that the unit holding this part of the line, which may actually be the 110th Brigade itself, is starting to suffer from pretty severe fatigue due to it not being rotated out for about the past 6 to 7 months, which is actually the reason, one of the reasons Zelensky stated for replacing Zaluzhny with Sersky, is so that way proper frontline rotations would occur and units wouldn't be engaging in frontline action until the point of critical exhaustion. So we're going to be hopefully seeing that this situation is managed, but right now, not trying to sugarcoat anything and tell you all the reality, this is a dire situation. When rear supply lines are threatened, that is usually the death knell of a battle for one side. It was the death knell for the Ukrainians in Bakhmut, especially, and I'll take y'all way back in time to around last year, and let me go up to Bakhmut, just up the road, but when the Russians had moved from Klishkivka up to around the fields right about here, they started to fire directly onto the highway from Ivanivsky to Bakhmut. And when they started doing that, the Ukrainian forces inside of the city started to be subjected to very low amounts of supply consistency, meaning that the amount of supplies that were supposed to be getting to them was iffy, very, very iffy. Sometimes they would get all the supplies they were looking for, sometimes they would get parts of the supplies they were looking for, sometimes they get absolutely none of it. And because of that, that's really what led to the Wagner group, after they made it about halfway into the city, about right here near this football stadium way back in the day. That's why they started making much faster progress through the city after that point, is because Ukrainian forces were trying to move farther back so that way they were connected to strong and steady supply lines. A lot like Avdiivka, there was in Bakhmut a second option. There was this northern road here, the 00506, that actually served as a supply route, a secondary one, into Bakhmut. But the issue with this road is that it's not an ideal road. It was still pretty close to the front lines. In fact, they pretty much took this giant swoop about a mile or two behind the lines. The Russians were pre-dialing in artillery, and once again, that supply line wasn't necessarily the best or the most usable. So that's kind of a similar situation that we're seeing in Avdiivka as well, because some people are going, well, as a matter of fact, they have a second supply route. And the one that everyone's talking about is this one from Severny here, or Tenenke, whichever part you want to say it comes from. And it's a small little dirt road here that travels from Severny over to Avdiivka. But the problem with that one as well is that one is actually pretty close to the front lines. It's about less than a mile. It's in the open fields, and that may actually pose some serious issues for Ukrainian supply trucks trying to move there, because they may actually come under direct fire as well. And there's actually a very large area where those vehicles could come under direct fire and be destroyed before they made it. On top of that, if the road starts to be heavily used, which it would be if it's supporting the entire Ukrainian contingent within the city of Avdiivka, this road could start to turn into those Rasputitsa slushes that are so famous at this point in the war, and they could end up bogging down vehicles. They can end up getting stuck out there, once again coming under direct fire because they're not moving quickly, and then they have to be abandoned by the crew, and the supplies are lost or destroyed out there in the middle of those fields without even making it into the city. So right now, in reality, going through the entire logistical analysis of how the supplies would even get to the defenders inside of the city, situation is dire. The Ukrainians will have to turn this around really quickly, or if they decide it cannot be turned around quickly, they're most likely going to withdraw most of the defensive forces within Avdiivka back into the village of Severny, Lestochkine, and also the Avdiivka coke plant, which will probably remain to be an anchor point of the Ukrainian defenses in this area. And in the future, it may actually pose a good launching point for the Ukrainians to try and conduct an offensive back into the city, or try and conduct some maneuvers around the city to try and encircle it and then force the Russians out the same way the Ukrainians may be about to be pushed out here in the moment. While the Russians may be able to claim a tactical victory in the city by taking it, because at this point I would have to say the chances are fairly certain that the Russians will probably end up taking this town at this point in the battle. It does not mean that this was a total victory overall. You have to remember that a lot like Bakhmut, all of the Russian forces that are involved in this offensive on Avdiivka are greatly depleted at this point. A lot of them have lost most of their tanks and armored personnel carriers, and a decent amount of them have lost any of the experienced cadre, what little they had, really not cadre, but their NCOs and officers that they had at the beginning of the offensive, they have long since passed. And so, going off of that, the Russian forces in this area are once again entirely depleted. This area of the front line will probably become incredibly inactive once the battle concludes, and the Ukrainians will probably be building up some defenses out here in the fields, but they don't even really need to, because I don't even think the Russians are going to be pushing much farther from Avdiivka, because you can see that the next populated settlement is actually Popasna, way over, well, Pokrovsk, way up here, dozens of miles away. So they're probably not going to be trying to push for that. That is way too far away, and they would have to push through multiple fields and multiple villages where the Ukrainians would be setting up killing fields pretty much like they did in Avdiivka. So the chances of them moving any farther from here are not going to be that big of a deal. So with that, I hope that kind of lays out the frontline analysis that we're looking at today, but that does not mean that the Ukrainian forces are doing badly in the city. They're actually doing quite well. They're still inflicting a good amount of losses on the Russian forces and showing them why it's not a smart idea to continue to fight in this war. Also, Matthew, it's pretty wild. Once the Super Bowl ended, there was like another 900 people that hopped on the stream all at like one moment. I'm like, good Lord. Like, look at that.
I noticed that too. Like a flood just came in all of a sudden.
Yeah, I was like, dang, because for everyone joining, we were only like reaching 3,000 viewers before all of y'all came in, and now we're up to about 4. But that was wild to see. The Super Bowl is actually affecting the numbers. But moving on from that and into Krasnoyarivka.
Man, if they were a real Super Bowl champ, they'd have 3 or 4 screens up. So one screen's playing the Enforcer, one's playing one channel of football, the other's playing a different channel. Like, you got to be a football legend to have those screens up. Have you seen that, by the way? Or like football fanatics with the multi-screens? Man, I haven't at all. Like, it's crazy, man. It's like the Ukrainians have their war room set up for drones, so like drone operations, but they have different football channels on each TV, and it's multiple TVs.
Dang, that's wild. I hope
yeah,
people
like,
have
I'm
that.
talking about big money, big money on football. I'm telling you,
man. I could never. But check this out. Wow. That's cool, isn't it? That's more fun than the Super Bowl. Wait, did we have a turret toss out of that, Matthew?
I think we might have. I didn't see it though.
Oh, there we go. There it is.
Oh, it had a nice arc.
I'll give it an 8. And now the tank's sitting there burning in the field. And the clip ends there. But still, pretty nice to see. And everyone's coming in now, Matthew. I'm seeing folks of like BC Sky. He's like, awesome game. It's like, hey, it must be over. Because now everyone's coming in. But
nice.
But moving on, and welcome back, BC Skyman. Wonderful to have you here tonight, because believe it or not, we actually lowered the fundraiser goal because we thought no one was going to be showing up because of the Super Bowl, but we still reached $3,300, which is equivalent to that single donation that Hal Rose threw in last Sunday, which was $3,333, which is wild when you really put that into perspective, how big of a donation that was from Hal Rose last weekend for Razom. But moving on from that, and into our next little clip inside of Avdiivka, we got to see the Russians firing incendiary rounds into the city again. This was actually from 3 days ago, but we just got the footage today, so here's the clip. I'm telling you something, man. If it was not white phosphorus, those would be some really beautiful fireworks right there. But this is one of the most deadly and one of the most controversial kind of weapons used in the war today, which is the most bizarre thing about this sort of stuff. But moving on from that and into our next clip, and also huge shout out to BC Scammon, who just threw in 100 to the fundraiser and got it on up to $3,324, meaning that we have now reached the level that Hal Rose's donation was last weekend. But moving on from that and down to the southern end of Avdiivka, we also got to see another Russian tank exploding on this side of the city. This is from a Russian perspective. There's the tank.
Oh,
And
you could hear some shrapnel or something flying by him too.
Man, as soon as I saw that smoke coming out of the turret, I was about to say it, actually. I was like, man, I would not be standing straight in front of that thing down the street. And then this happened. Oh, look at that chunk of shrapnel that was coming down the road right there. Ooh.
And listen right after you'll hear it go.
Ooh.
Man,
Yeah.
that was a big chunk.
Man, that was a big chunky. But moving on from that and into our next clip down in southern Opitne, we got to see the destruction of 2 Russian tanks in this area.
To change the world.
Okay, well, I don't know if they're changing the world by the song, but we can see the Ukrainians are changing the world with these drone attacks. Watch them come in and smack them around a little. I gotta tell y'all, this is literally insane. Like, we are watching the viewership directly be impacted by the Super Bowl. That is nuts.
The Super Bowl must have had a record viewership or something. It was literally like that's wild.
Yeah, because like our graph never looks like this. This is a wild looking graph tonight. But wait, we just saw this.
We typically beat out cable TV, like as a YouTube channel, like pretty much consistently every night.
Yeah, we actually do, believe it or not, y'all. That's actually something that blows us away sometimes. But yeah, we've seen this clip. We just watched this, but we got to see the extended clip in this part of Avdiivka. And yes, Sean, wait, we already did the casualties. That's how far the stream has gone during the Super Bowl. We are already about to move on. Oh, Lord, it's Hal Rose!
Dang,
He
look at
donated
that.
333! Look at that!
Huge donation.
Legend!
Jeez.
Legend! But with that, we're now moving on from that clip and a little bit further down. And also, the fundraisers reached $3,727. Truly incredible. And the return of a legend, Hal Rose, who was the absolute savior of the last fundraiser, getting it all the way up to $8.3 thousand and throwing in $3,333 personally, which is really incredible when you think about it. But moving on from that, and down into the area near Pisky, we got to see the 59th hitting some Russian forces. Check it out. I don't know what this is. I think that's Godzilla. Maybe. Nah. Whatever that was, it was not Godzilla. It had 4 legs. Must have been one of Kadirov's goats. But we can see the 59th hitting multiple Russian locations. Ooh.
They did a number on that. What the hell is this?
An elephant? I have no idea, man. That's very weird. Like, they're just throwing that thing in every once in a while. There's something like that, you know? But
They must be fans of that movie. Damn.
Dang. Is that the Great Wall of
I
China?
don't know about the editing on this one. This is a little over the top.
Yeah, this is a
I'm getting
little
confused.
flamboyant, Kathleen. But we can see the FPV drone hitting a BMP. I'm sure the elephant's about to pop back up again. Nope, actually, we moved on to them hitting the Russians in a high-rise. And boop. Look at that. Impressive stuff. But moving on from that clip and on into our next one down near Marinka, we actually got to hear about a Russian volunteer from Sierra Leone today. Apparently captured by Ukrainian forces. It's pretty wild to think the Russians are trying to recruit from really anywhere in the world where people may be desperate for cash. And this is one of the unfortunate victims of that Russian war machine, is this guy who has probably sold a story of great wealth and money if he was to go and serve in the Russian army. But moving on from that, and into our next bit of news near Novomikhailivka, we also got to see that some Russian electronic warfare equipment was destroyed en masse by the 33rd Brigade near Novoprokopivka. Here's the clip. All right, I don't know about that song, but we could see them hitting multiple EW systems in the area. And we can see them slamming the Russian forces over and over and over.
For some reason, I see people talking a hell of a lot more about Taylor Swift for whatever reason than the Super Bowl. Apparently, she was in the halftime show. I just, I don't understand. I just don't understand.
Let's see. So I'm not getting any of this. I live under a rock on all this stuff. I do this for I do this for a living. I literally live, eat, and breathe this every day. So I have no idea about anything from the Super Bowl. But moving on from that, and I hardly even know who Taylor Swift is either. I know they're a celebrity, but I don't really know much more about them than that.
Oh no, I know what it's about. I'm just saying I don't understand why there's so much like excitement and hype around it because Taylor Swift's been around for a good minute.
Apparently so. apparently so. Allegedly, I don't know.
I've heard she's got a very vigilant, very aggressive gang that not a gang, but more like a cult following that gets very upset if you say anything negative. So I'm trying to watch out.
Hey, that sounds a lot like our audience. I'm just playing. That's what someone says about the Lee Spring Army, though. And I gotta say this though, Matthew, just to talk about this because this is a good point to bring it up. Because a couple of folks brought it to our attention last night that apparently there was a veiled death threat made by that lunatic last night, so we had to go over there and look at it. And actually, it was very heartwarming to see that everyone, when I mean everyone is in like the 6 people who watch the show still, apparently are getting fed up with the stuff because literally almost every single comment in the comment section was something saying, "What the hell is wrong with you? Move on." And then some people were actually threatening to like knock this guy's teeth out at this point, which I've never seen before. So I was kind of laughing at that. I was like, wow, this is not going that well anymore. Maybe he will finally learn to stop talking about us. But, that's a pretty high hope. Crack addicts, old habits die hard, But moving on from that, and down into the area of Robotne and Verbove, we did get to see the Ukrainians using some FPV drones to hit some Russian trenches. And here's the clip. And Reese Writings, you don't even want to know who we're talking about. I just had to update everyone else who knows who it is. But for everyone else who doesn't, I wouldn't even worry about it. Time's long since passed. And honestly, this point is hilarious. Oh, Russia went running. He's on the move.
He's booking it. He's covering ground too.
Yeah, he's going. He's doing a little bit of hopscotch down there too. And the drone's seeing him do it.
Also, by the way, I hate to keep distracting everyone, but I'm sort of like interested here. I see people saying that apparently, because I mentioned it, Taylor Swift is dating one of the football players that was playing in the game.
Oh, he is?
I guess he'll be the next hit song she makes later on when the inevitable happens and the dude gets dumped. Because that'd be like the 50th or 60th boyfriend, I think.
Man, it must be tough being a Hollywood celebrity.
Man. Well, I'm telling you what, she knows how to write those songs about him. I'm telling you, they go number one.
Yeah, I mean, apparently so. I don't really know a lot about it though, so
I mean, neither. I just heard a few things here and there.
Let's see. Daniel gets it. Look at Papa Meat's take on the Swiftie. Who the hell's Papa Meat? Like that sounds like that's one hell of a nickname right there, Papa Meat. I'm gonna have to put that one down in my journal.
I don't know about that. I don't know,
man. That's what we gotta start calling the hot dogs. It's Papa Meat. Oh man, but he ain't selling it. He's taking it. You know what I mean? But nevertheless, we can see the 65th continuing to smack around Russian forces with the FPV drones down there. And let's see here. We can see them looking at another Russian bunker on the trench line. I'm seeing a lot of people sharing some interesting facts with me that I didn't know. Apparently, there's a pretty, well, at least from what I remember back when I used to pay attention to these people, there was a fairly prominent, according to what I'm seeing in the chat, political commentator that made a rap song and apparently got #1 on the charts. I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, I know about that.
Oh,
you,
you do?
you don't even want to bother with it.
Good. That's it. I wasn't going to anyways. I'm just like, dude, honestly, right now, people are telling me stuff, and I feel like Captain America, in the movie when he woke up like 70 years later and it's the present day, and I'm like catching up because people are telling me stuff I have no idea about because I just don't ever get the time to look around and see what's going on out there. And also, Brian Key said, not all of us watched the Super Bowl who just showed up. That's true. But if you saw our graph, what's insane is that we've gained 1.3 thousand live viewers since the Super Bowl ended. Like, I'm not even kidding. You can actually see it on our viewer graph. It's been climbing ever since then, which is bizarre. It's actually it's cool to look at. It's like when you hear about, like, for example, in Britain, when the World Cup is on, the British energy grid actually goes and overproduces, I believe, electricity at certain points during, like, leading up to commercial breaks, because they know everyone's going to go and turn on their tea kettle during the commercial break. It's kind of like that cool statistic, in fact. But we can see the 65th Brigade making statistics and facts out of these Russian soldiers here in this trench. Papa Meat is Papa Roach with a hygiene rating. What the hell's Papa Roach? All this is new to me, Matthew. I don't even know what anyone's talking about.
A Papa Roach. That's like Putin.
Man, we got that Papa Roach. We got that Papa Roach up in here.
You can step on a roach and it seems to like pop back up and it keeps going, causing mayhem, and nothing seems to hit it. Yeah, it's really like Putin.
Dude, but you know one thing, man? The roaches, kind of nasty, man. I'm not gonna lie. I hate roaches.
Yeah, that's true. The Ukrainians are got the boot out and they're stomping the roach, but it's not going away.
Well, eventually it will, though. Eventually if you hit it enough, it will flatten out.
It can survive a nuke,
I'm doubting that, man. Do you think a roach could survive like 9,000 degrees Fahrenheit right on top of it? I'm doubting that, man.
I mean, that's what they're telling me. I mean, they're telling me it can survive. But, I don't think Putin's got an exception to that. He's a different type of roach.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Perhaps.
And also the bearded atheist said, "You guys are the most out of touch 20-year-olds I've ever seen." Oh man!
Man!
I don't know if that's actually a compliment or a bad thing, actually, because to me it's actually somewhat good to be out of touch with some of the stuff that's going on. Like some of it's okay, but some of it's like, yeah, that's really not productive. But I can understand if people like to follow like the dramatic stuff and everything like that. I mean, that's personal preference, I guess.
I mean, I'm sure it's really interesting. Otherwise, everyone wouldn't be into it. But at the same time, I've got a lot going on in my life on a daily basis, including running this channel. And so I very rarely ever get to focus on anything outside of, this, really, outside of this war. So I have no idea who any of these people were. And before that even, I was like dug into learning about all this years before this even happened. So I didn't even have time to learn about what was going on then. So yes, I am out of touch. And the bearded atheist said, depends on the person, to be honest, LMAO. Probably not a good thing for most, but all I gotta say on that is if I was one of those people, I probably wouldn't be who I am, being able to run the show and talk about what we're seeing here on camera. So, that is what it is. But we see the Russian crawling around a little bit more. Catherine F. said, don't you read the news? Only some of it. I avoid most of it. Political news, I don't read. And I also don't read about celebrities because celebrities just aren't news to me. A hot take though, because a lot of people consider celebrities news, but I don't really care who broke up with who or who's doing what or who got slapped at the Emmys or whatever it was. Like it just doesn't matter. It's just all inconsequential. It's just the Oscars, whatever it was. You know what I'm talking about. Chris Rock getting slapped by Will Smith. That's the only thing I know, like celebrity-wise, is Chris Rock got slapped by Will Smith. That's like the only thing I know or even care to know because it was a funny video. Oh, dead in the trench.
Jaga.
Igor. And then in Sassia 8 said, maybe hang out in some bar after the live stream for a few hours. I'm good. I'm good.
We had plenty of opportunities to do that in law school. That's literally all the law school students ever did was leave school and go get soused.
Man, poor law school kids. Like some of them actually have kept in touch with me after after we got out of law school, and a lot of them are like, hey, like a few of them have asked if I wanted to go drinking, and I'm like, I'm good. And I was like, well, is this like a thing you did before law school? They're like, nah, I picked it up when law school started. And I was like, damn. It's like, that cuts deep. It's law school is like that, you know. It's like that's sad. I hate that.
You know why they're doing it though? Like I totally understand why they're going and hitting the bar every day, because it makes you want to go hit the bar. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, I don't know if becoming an alcoholic at the same time is going to be a good thing in combo with the law. I'm not sure if that's going to work out.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, but
You're gonna be bringing in a bottle full of Tito's to the trial. I don't know. I don't know if that's gonna fly.
man, you're gonna bring in some Forrester or some Johnny Walkers or something, you know, just take a swig in the middle of the trial. But anyways,
And they be drinking Johnny Walker so much they're coming in with Scottish accents around there. Hey, I'm not going to try to do a Scottish accent. Screw that.
dude, they sound like Scotty from Star Trek. They're going, Captain, she can't handle much more. Oh man, and we can see this Russian here. He's in his trench of trash, looking around. This is the 65th Brigade also going for these guys here in this clip. And Catherine F said, I worked with lots of lawyers. They're kind of unhappy. I think they all are.
They're all miserable.
yeah.
They're all so miserable. And that's what convinced me. I'm like, how could, if all these lawyers are miserable, all the law students are miserable, all the professors are miserable, and they make fun of their own career. Yeah, and they make fun of their own career. It's like, why am I wanting to go into this again and go into this much debt to get out and be in misery? Because it's not a happy profession. It's very downtrodden, extremely stressful, and honestly, you know, you get to help people, but I think a lot of people are in it for the money. I think that's the bottom line of it. If we're being real here, I think a lot of people go into it thinking they're going to get rich, and that's not a good reason to go into something.
And also, Nate said, are you planning on finishing law school in the future? No. We dropped out completely, and I'm not planning on going back. It's not for me. Like, it's not for me at all. I found that out after the first semester, and then I tried to power through the second semester and ended up giving up because I was like, I just can't do this. But we can see this Russian here. He's continuing to try and hold the trench single-handedly, which I don't really think this is going to end well for him, but he can still try. Oh, look, it's Tom J. Oatley.
Hey, welcome back.
Hey. And Joe Snyder said, was it that terrible? Yes, it was. Oh, and the Russian's taking a tumble here. He's rolling around. It looks like he might be down for the count.
That's kind of what law school felt like, this guy right here.
Yeah, it really did feel like that. It was pretty tough stuff. Well, on that note, we're going to end the video there because I've seen that whole video and it's better to stop it there than let y'all see the rest of it. But moving on from that and down past the southern front and down into the area of the left bank of the Dnipro River, we got to see some fairly interesting developments down here, starting off with an apparent explosion that happened just north of Novokakhovka at the Kakhovka industrial plant, temporarily knocking out power in the area. You can actually see the explosion right there. And that was apparently done by a Ukrainian drone attack. Moving on to our next clip in the area, we also got to see the 35th Marine Brigade firing some of their BM-21 grads at the Russians on the other side of the river. All right, we're going to be muting that, but you can see the grad firing. I see a decent amount of lawyers coming in and going, I love my job. Hey, that's good for you. But it's just not for me. You know, and you gotta find out what's best for you in life and, you know, do it and not do it. If you love being an attorney, that is perfect. If you don't, better not do it. And you know, I have a feeling that a lot of folks in law school are probably going to end up deciding that, but hopefully sooner rather than later so they don't get into crippling amounts of debt. Because even going there for the short time we went there, it is prohibitively expensive to go to law school. It's insane how much it actually costs, and the amount of loans that you can accrue just from a semester and a half, or not even a semester and a half, it was more like a semester and a quarter, were actually really, really high. So, now we got to deal with that situation in the background, but that is a part of life and a part of learning that career path was not for us. But moving on from that into the area of Radinsk, we also got to see a HIMARS hitting a pack of Urals, or Kamazes. Then we can see them right there, and there goes the cluster right on top of them, knocking them all out. And that was something that I found hilarious. Really quickly, just to share with y'all, is that when we dropped out of law school, apparently now, according to the hot dog salesman, we're failures. But that's kind of weird because it's like, you're a hot dog salesman. It's like, who are you to say what's failing? It's like, that's a little odd, don't you think, Matthew?
Yeah, I don't see how you can interpret that to be a failure in any way. I mean, yeah, if you didn't try, I would call that a failure. But if you tried it and then you realize, this isn't my thing, there's other things I'd be willing to do or more apt to do, that's one thing. But if you never try and you're just sort of like floundering, that's a whole other story.
Yeah, I was sitting there when I heard that because, we, of course, everyone told us about it, so we have to go and see what's up and then laugh at like 6 people listening to it. But like, I heard that and I was like, how the hell is that being a failure? It's like, you're the failure. It's like, it's like, you're the real failure. You're a crack addict, and didn't even go to college when you have a GI Bill. It's like, you don't even have a degree. It's like, how in the world are we fail? That was weird to me. I was like, just absolute clown world logic. But moving on from that, it's now time for us to actually get to the speech from President Zelensky, which is kind of sad because it looks like everyone finally made it in here tonight, but we just got done wrapping up the news. So let me make sure that we have the speech from today, and here's today's speech. And so, without further ado, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky.
Дорогі українці, українки, кілька важливих речей за цей день. Почав цей день із чергових призначень, потім доповіді щодо ситуації на фронті від наших військових, а також звіти від МВС, ДСНС, регіональних влад щодо роботи нашої ППО, протидії російським ударам, ліквідації наслідків, посиленню наших спроможностей. І зараз передусім я хочу подякувати усім нашим захисникам неба, які кожної ночі, кожного дня відбивають російські атаки дронами і ракетами. Настільки, наскільки це дозволяє сила нашої ППО зараз. Лише від минулого вечора і до ранку сьогодні вдалося знищити 40 шахедів, більшість із застосованих Росією. Майже увесь цей результат наших мобільних вогневих груп. У різних регіонах Київщина, Житомирщина, Вінниччина, Одеська, Миколаївська, Херсонська, Кіровоградська, Черкаська область. Наша Дніпровщина. Я дякую кожному воїну, які і зараз, і щодоби на бойовому чергуванні рятують нашу інфраструктуру, наших людей. Від початку року і по цей час збито вже 359 шахедів. Влучність наших захисників неба, робота РЕП, підтримка кожного з наших партнерів щодо повітряного щита – це буквально порятунок життів. Працюємо, щоб додати більше ефективності нашим мобільним вогневим групам та щоб ще більше регіонів України отримали захисні системи РЕП. Це один із ключових пріоритетів року. І хочу сьогодні особливо відзначити колектив ДСНС України. Кожного, хто працює на місцях влучань, ліквідує пожежі, розбирає завали. Харків та область, Запоріжжя та область, Херсонщина, Миколаївщина, Сумщина, Чернігівщина. В кожній нашій громаді завжди є допомога, завжди є ті, хто рятує після російських обстрілів. І це також функціональність нашої держави, це також героїзм нашого народу. Усіх тих людей, які просто роблять свою роботу і цим допомагають усій Україні вистояти. Наші рятувальники, я дякую вам. А окремо сьогодні відзначу працівників ДСНС України у Харківській області, головних майстер-сержантів Дмитра Павінського Дениса Шаповалова, Олексія Назаренка, капітана Артема Єгорова та підполковника Сергія Зарцова. Дякую, хлопці. Також відзначу рятувальників ДСНС України у Миколаївській області, сержантів Дмитра Піха та Василя Ливкова, майстер-сержанта Ігоря Пономаренка, головних майстер-сержантів Миколу Башлика та Сергія Куріченка, а також майора Олександра Довгопола. Дякую за вашу самовідданість. І ще варто відзначити працівників ДСНС України у місті Києві, які завжди оперативно ліквідовують наслідки обстрілів та допомагають киянам, коли це потрібно. Сержанти служби цивільного захисту Тарас Романцов, Орест Гаврилюк, Сергій Безпалий, майстер-сержант Іван Кагарлицький та головний майстер-сержант Олександр Шостка. Дякую вам. Дякую усім, хто від 24 лютого б'ється і працює, щоб зміцнити Україну. Дякую усім, хто в Україні та разом з Україною. Слава Україні!
And Herom Slava.
Herom Slava.
And that is the end of the speech for President Volodymyr Zelensky. And it rounded out a wildly successful night for the fundraiser, getting up to a whopping $4,061. Killing it. Absolutely incredible. The Lee Spring Army has once again shown the world, everyone in the world, that the Lee Spring Army will never die. And on top of that, the stream's connection just died.
Oh.
And it's back. Oh, man. But you know something? While our stream's connectivity will go from good to not good to bad, the Lee Spring Army does nothing but stay good and continues to be a legend, an absolute G of the fundraisers, and killing it for support for Ukraine. $4,061 being given to revive soldiers of Ukraine is going to be helping to save Ukrainian soldiers' lives. And that is absolutely incredible, absolutely unbelievable. And I got to say thank you to everyone once again who is a part of this fundraiser tonight and was helping us to actually have a part in helping out in Ukraine. It's something that only a community like this one could do here on this channel. It doesn't really happen much anywhere else on the internet, and if it does, it is a little questionable. It is unbelievable to know that we have been able to do this the same way for 718 days, and here very soon, very, very soon, as a matter of fact, we are going to be reaching the 2nd year anniversary of the war. And in about 4 days, I'll actually be turning 22. It'll be my 22nd birthday, believe it or not, which is really cool. We'll, of course, be on air that Thursday, celebrating my birthday with all of y'all. And on top of that, we will also be celebrating the 2nd anniversary of the war with all of y'all. It's not going to be like last time. I've decided, why in the world have guests? There are people who would want to be on the show, in respect to them, but I think it'd be better if we just shared this moment with y'all here in the Lee Spring Army instead of trying to bring on other folks who are probably just looking for cloud subscribers or something like that. That'd probably be better, in my opinion at least. So we are going to be having a little special night on the 730th day of the war, which is year 2 of the war in Ukraine. And I hope y'all are around for that, and I hope y'all are here for my birthday as well. But we have a good little bit to talk about tonight. We're probably going to talk for about the next 20 minutes or so to all of y'all in the chat and talk to y'all about some of y'all's questions, some of y'all's comments, maybe kid around a little bit, because overall, tonight was a very good night. What blew us away is that we actually ended up getting a higher viewership tonight at the peak than we did last night after the Super Bowl ended, which it is literally, no, it's actually insane. If you can see the graph, it's like, wow, that's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. Like, everyone came here after the Super Bowl ended. But anyways, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so calling off our top donor since the last time, we have a $333 donation from Hal Rose, which is extremely massive. We also have a $150 from none other than Mark the Kinetic Possum. We also have a $100 from BC Skyman, as well as a $50 from Osio Dohitsu, as well as a $50 from GTO Joe 04, Wendy Buchanan, Ken Lane, Jonathan Wardle, Shannon Jane, Zwen Tran, and also Skip Tracer 007. And as y'all probably recognize, there were some channel legends mixed up in there, as well as some new donors I've never seen before. And also, welcome to the LSA, and also thank you very much for helping out Ukraine. And a huge shout out to everyone that has donated tonight. I'll be honest with you, after I thought about the Super Bowl, I was not sure if we were going to even reach the $1,500 goal. But y'all came through big league tonight and doubled it and tripled it and gave it to the next person, literally. So huge shout out to you all. And Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say, it is wonderful to see that everyone did all of this incredible fundraising tonight. It is really amazing. It always blows me away, and it's not only just mind blowing. It's very heartwarming as well to see that people still care about folks overseas, thousands of miles away, as much as they did really at the very beginning of the war. That is truly incredible to me, and it really does show that there is a lot of faith to be had in just mankind in general. It's incredible, it's wonderful, and I thank every single one of y'all again for not only just being very conscientious and well-minded people, but being a part of the Lee Spring Army as well. And so with that, I hope that does address that again pretty well. And with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so addressing our one poll that we have to cover, the question says, Russia recruits 15,000 Nepali citizens to fight in Ukraine, and the question is, will Russia start relying on mercenaries? 80% said yes, they will. 10% said no, Russia will rely still on citizens, and 10% said unsure. And on this one, I have a feeling that it's going to be a mixture. Now, I know I didn't include that option on there, and I don't know why I didn't, because I should have. But for those of you that said it was a mixture, I would agree with you on that. I don't think Russia is going to rely totally on citizens or mercenaries, but as we can see with the 15,000 Nepali citizens and also that one captured soldier from Sierra Leone, that Russia is looking to outsource their military operations to an extent. And they can't do it with Wagner anymore because they're now obsolete. So they're looking to go to other countries to retrieve and get people. So not good. And I'm not sure why they're choosing to do that because they have a wide pool of people they can choose from right there in their home country. But apparently they don't think very highly of them or think that they can be trained very well because they're looking for people from elsewhere. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that they probably are running into some manpower issues, probably a pretty decent concern of theirs, no doubt about it, and they're trying to find ways to bring folks in. They're bringing in people from Nepal, they're bringing folks in from a large array of African nations, from Central Asia. They're really looking for people wherever they can, probably because of the manpower shortage. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, and with that, we are on to the questions.
All right, so moving into our live chat questions, we have one from Nick, who says, can we get an update on the Russian vehicle storage locations?
Sadly, not right now, because we usually have to wait for a Maxar satellite to orbit over, take the pictures, and then those pictures to be made public, and we haven't gotten any in between the last time we talked about those storage facilities and right now. So sadly, the best I would do is be able to show you the same stagnant Google Maps picture we have, which wouldn't really tell us a lot of information that we could extrapolate. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can as to why we really can't do that, and we wouldn't have an answer for that right now. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mad Jack F, who says, wasn't the location of the Shahid that hit Moldova actually in the territory of Transnistria?
Yes. It was within Transnistria, but Transnistria is an unofficial country that is not recognized by anyone except for the Russian Federation and Belarus. So for most people, we would consider this to be landing in exploding inside of Moldova itself, instead of, it being Transnistria. But that is a good point. It actually did land and explode within there, so that even adds a whole other layer to it. Are the Russians attacking their own puppet in Moldova? Probably not, but nevertheless, still interesting. Also, another thing that's really interesting is look at this. The Moldovans and the Ukrainians have planted a forest belt on their border. Like, look at this. A perfect 90-degree angle right there. Just, and then it goes 90 degrees to the right. And then,
I guess you could literally just run across that border. I don't see any, like, fence or obstructions or anything.
No street view, so sadly we can't check to see if there's a fence. But I'm assuming there is no fence. You can just run straight across. Like, yeah, well, right there, you can literally just drive right across. So that's pretty interesting. That's kind of a little odd. I would never thought of it that way. Would you, Matthew? Would you have thought of it that way?
No, I didn't think they had open borders.
They're flooding in. But anyways, I'm just kidding, folks. I'm just kidding. Don't take that out of context.
That's a joke. It's a joke.
It's just a prank, bro. It's just a prank. But with that, hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Halligan218, who says, how big of a role does the lack of funding to Ukraine play into what we're seeing right now in Avdiivka?
It doesn't really play in much, actually. And I've seen some people out there trying to do it. And of course, they're doing it on a domestic political level, which really just pisses me off because you're demonizing probably about half of the Ukraine war supporters and turning them away from the war. And you have half of the community trying to persecute them for that. And that may be completely out of their control. But
No, Enforcer, you're mixing it all up. It's more important to put your own political beliefs out there than to support the poor souls that are trying to survive in Ukraine. You're mixing it all up.
That's right. We should put our petty political differences not aside. We should put them directly in the forefront and get into conflict with each other and alienate half of the supporters because our cause is right and theirs is wrong. And that certainly will benefit Ukraine because now no support will ever get passed and hundreds of thousands of people will die because, hey, at least my side was right and we can blame the others for not doing what we wanted, although they were agreeing with us up until then. That's exactly what we want to do, and that is literally the synopsis of U.S. politics and on either side. But seeing that from our hot dog salesman really just interests me because it's a good look into the domestic political psyche. And what's so interesting is that it is self-destructive. If both sides actually agree on something, and then there's a small amount of friction from either side, a extremely political-minded person in America will immediately begin to ostracize everyone on the other side, even if they actually agree with them, and end up getting violent against them, pretty much dividing the nation in half on its own, which is bizarre to me, because it's like, like when you look at it, it's like so many Americans agree on the same things until one side, like it's not the same side every time. It's actually both of them. It just kind of alternates until one group on one side decides the other side isn't into it enough, and then they go and isolate them and alienate them from being a part of the team. So that's something that blows me away, and that's something that we've seen lately. But beyond that, the support in Avdiivka, it wouldn't really change much because it is a meat grinder down there. And the Western support that would have been provided already was provided, and it's there. I mean, the highest concentration of Western vehicles anywhere on the front line right now is at Avdiivka. So you probably wouldn't be able to support them more because it would take entirely brand new brigades being raised by the Ukrainian military and moving them into Avdiivka, which would take months and months, and they would have never arrived until after the battle. So nothing would have really changed in Avdiivka, but on an overall strategic aspect of the entire war, things will change depending on high amounts of European and American support, really Western support as a whole, or a lack of it. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, I'm happy to say that, I don't profess to be an equipment expert in any sense of the word, but I see OSINT Technical has confirmed that was apparently a Vampire SAM system that took down that drone that everyone was wondering what took it down. Because it looked like it was a laser pointing at it, and then all of a sudden a missile or some type of projectile came out of nowhere, hit it, and then took it down. That appears to be one of the first times we've ever seen the L3 Harris Vampire system in action in Ukraine. So apparently it's working pretty damn good because it took it down pretty effectively, which is good to see. And it's easily put in the back of a pickup truck, so it's really easy to deploy. So that might be a new hope for Ukraine to take down more of those drones.
Episode 4, A New Hope. But with that,
Yeah.
But with that, I don't really have a lot to add. Matthew was actually the one doing most of the research on that. So good on you, Matthew. And thank you for sharing that with the audience. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next question goes to Neil Vizanot, who says, do you think Ukraine will have preset artillery waiting for the Russians to move into the city?
Wait, reread that one again.
They said, do you think that Ukraine will have preset artillery waiting for the Russians to move into the city?
Yes, most likely so. Unless if there are still civilians that decide to remain in the city, which sometimes that is the case, they may hold off, but the realistic answer is that they'll probably have pre-dialed artillery hitting the Russians as they advance, and they'll be making sure to check their progress on where the Russians are with drones to make sure that the artillery fire is actually accurate in hitting Russian forces. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, someone in the live chat called McDeath said, stupid folks have made a movie that is called Civil War. It's about how the U.S. falls into a modern civil war. And taking one out of the live chat myself and talking about something, that is something that has aggravated me a little bit, because movies kind of ebb and flow with the general feelings of society. But when you make a movie like that, you're pretty much begging for that kind of angst in the public to continue to grow, that there's going to be some kind of an ongoing conflict or a civil war, may even be a catalyst that helps to get us to that point. Because I know many of y'all have heard of a thing like self-fulfilling prophecy, and making movies like that just instills this mindset into every single side in America that will create a self-fulfilling prophecy that there is going to probably be a civil war. I mean, like, if anyone looks around, because I very rarely look around in that field, but I see it being mentioned by everyone on every side that a civil war is coming. Everyone in America is just like frothing at the mouth for one and wants to kill the people they disagree with, kind of like hot dog salesmen up there in Minnesota or wherever. They're all frothing at the mouth for that, and I find it absolutely sickening that people would want that. And that's something that when I saw that movie coming out, I was like, oh boy, that's great. It's like, everyone's already talking about it. Instead of letting this mindset die down and cool off, we're going to fuel it by making a movie about it, and probably getting one of the sides, based on the outcome of the movie, just really pissed off. I mean, they're going to be livid, whoever the movie is not directed at, because it's going to be directed at one side or the other. One side's going to win and one side's going to lose in the movie for sure, so you're going to just absolutely piss off the other side and make them feel like they even need to do something more. That's something I gotta say. And I see a lot of people say, no one's looking for that. No. It doesn't take that long to look around Twitter and see the word civil war being mentioned in an American context. And like, I don't know, Matthew, you've seen that, right?
I see people saying crazy stuff all the time on Twitter. Twitter is honestly, like with any social media platform now, it's almost like a cesspool. There is good information, but you have to know how to find it. And everybody puts out their opinion now, and everybody has a right to have their opinion. But there's some opinions out there that you're like, why would you say that, and why would you think that? It's like, we're all Americans. It's like, why are you hoping for destruction? That's not what we should be hoping for.
Well, I gotta, like, just being completely frank, it's very low intelligent idiots on both sides that believe that the biggest enemy in the world isn't a foreign power like Russia or China. They actually think that Russia or China is their friend, and their enemies are their next door neighbors that just end up having a slight disagreement with them over minor domestic issues. And that's something that just it just pisses me off. It really does, because that's like the modern American mindset, is that the biggest enemy is your neighbor, not a foreign nation. And that just blows me away, how in the world everyone got into that mindset in the span of my lifetime. Because I remember back when I was growing up, because I grew up post 9/11, a lot of people were very, very big into being American patriots. Everyone loved the United States everywhere. And over the past 10 years or so, everyone has ended up hating America, like both sides. And some people will go, no, the other side hates America, but we're true Americans. No, that's not true, because I look at both sides, and then they go, look at the government. Look at what they are. We gotta hate America and wish for its death because the government, and both sides do that at this point. It's like, that is insane. That is just bat crazy, like, in my honest opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a question from Viosta, who says, do you think Russia is testing air defense in Moldova?
Probably not. They probably did that like in Romania just to give a little warning. They're probably not caring about testing anything, because Moldova is probably a good 2 years away. If everything went Russia's way, it's probably 2 to 3 years away where they'd even be able to consider something like that. So I doubt it, in my opinion. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who says, speaking of civil wars, do you think there will be a civil war in Russia coming from the Far East?
I have a feeling if there was anything like a civil war in Russia, it'd probably be all fought in Western Russia, because that's where most of the population lives. Or if there was anything like a revolution that happened in Russia, it would be down in the Caucasus Mountain regions, because these people hate Russia with a passion. It's just that they usually get to hide it fairly well, because, the Russians install puppet leaders like Kadyrov. So I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And the next one goes to David Millsaps, who says, do you think they will be taking out the Crimean bridges soon, the railway or the roadway, the Kerch to Russia and north to the land bridge? And if not, why not yet?
I would say They're probably going to go for the bridge in a couple of months. I don't think right now is a good moment to attack the bridge because there's really no pressure being put on the Russians where knocking out the bridge would be crucial for Ukrainian success or furthering Ukrainian success. So I have a feeling it's probably going to be waiting several months until that happens, at least in my opinion at the moment. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And also, Matthew, I saw someone say, sorry, no, both sides are not the same. Oh man, I hate to hear it. I'm guessing you may have drank the Kool-Aid because if you think one
Don't
side's
fall in that trap, people.
Yeah.
Don't fall into it.
because if you think one side's better than the other, I hate to tell you, you're sadly mistaken. Just take a step back for 2 or 3 months. Don't get directly involved in politics and just watch the actions that are taken by both sides. You'll find out that they're both identical to each other. It's just that they always oppose each other, so that way it looks like the other side's bad and yours is good. But when you really get down to it, there is no real sense into why one side will oppose one thing in one category and then not in the other. Probably the best example I can give you of that is how both sides of the political spectrum here in the United States value life. Because both sides say they value life extremely in every single instance, but they apply that rule very differently in 2 specific instances. I'm not going to tell you what those instances are, but if you look, it is literally the exact same line and reasoning and statements made, but they're just flip-flopped on the 2 topics. And that's something that tells me, apparently, there is no real hard and fast values in either party. It's just picking the opposite of whatever the other side picked first. So, just saying that, just giving you my opinion. But with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we have a question this time from Joe Demet, who says, do you think the new axis of evil is Iran, Russia, China, and North Korea?
Yes. It's really more so Russia and China, and then they have smaller countries that are a part of this, major sphere. Really, it's the Chinese. I mean, not even the Russians are a major power because their GDP is close to around $1 trillion at this point, which in the big picture is nothing. Russia has an economy smaller than the state of Texas. So when you put that into perspective, it is literally nothing. So going off that, it's really the Chinese, and then the Chinese sphere of influence are the Russians, the North Koreans, possibly the Iranians, as well as Cuba and Venezuela. South Africa and India don't really count. I know they're a part of BRICS, but they don't really count. That's a really big argument in the world as to why they wouldn't. I'm a fan of believing they aren't. They're more so neutral nations at this point. And then the American sphere is the United States, Canada, Mexico, a pretty good amount of South America, at least the parts that aren't in sheer turmoil at this moment in time, which they used to not be. Pretty much all of Europe, a good amount of the Middle East, funnily enough. The countries of East Asia, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, Vietnam, oddly enough, Indonesia, Malaysia, Australia, New Zealand, really anyone that isn't directly tied into the Chinese. And I find it so funny when Putin in the interview tried to talk about how America was going to be surpassed by the Chinese. They've already been surpassed years ago. It's like, if that's the case, why, like I just heard about this today, why is it like 36,000? Well, I can't even get into that. But anyways, yeah, China is not doing too well. They're not going to surpass the United States, but I would say that it's more so a Chinese-led sphere at this point than anything else, and those are China's kind of like friends that are in their sphere, and then we have our sphere. So it's what, how in the world do they call it these days, Matthew? It's like has something to do with spheres of influence. It's a multipolar world, whatever they call it. It's really a bipolar.
Bilateral?
No, I think they like call it a multipolar world, and that's such a stupid thing. But it's really just a bipolar world, a lot like it was during the Soviet Union. You have the United States and its sphere of influence, and and of course it's really just a Western sphere, but America being the largest economic power out of all of them, it's kind of revolving around the United States. And then with the Eastern sphere, it's revolving around the Chinese because they're the largest economic power within that sphere. So with that, I hope that does address that quite well, at least in my opinion. But yes, I would say that is kind of like a new axis of power in the world, is the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians, the Koreans, and a few minor countries here in the Americas, Venezuela and Cuba. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And also, by the way, to answer everyone's question, we still don't know where Gerasimov is. We haven't heard of his whereabouts. And I saw some people asking, why was he in the thumbnail of the video earlier today if we don't know where he's at? Well, technically, he still is in charge of their military, but until we get confirmation he's out, I had to put him there because I didn't know who else to put on the thumbnail. But no, he could be anywhere at this point. He could be in a gulag. He could be in the cold ground. We don't really know. Or he could be fine and he's just being kept under wraps for whatever reason, but I find that kind of unlikely. But moving on to our next question, we have one from Robert Harrington who says, do you think Ukraine will be a respected powerhouse economically like Germany, Japan, and South Korea after their wars? And thank you, LOC.
I have a feeling they're probably going to be viewed a lot like the Polish after the war. Not a lot of people are really going to know about their economic significance if it does grow after the war. And if you do, you have to be really involved in diplomacy and geopolitics around the world to know that. Because not really a lot of people know that the Polish economy these days is actually incredibly strong. Let me go pull up their GDP stats for y'all to show y'all. So we have Poland, and then we have, let me go find another country. What would be a good one to compare? Oh, let's see here. What would be a good one to compare, Matthew, with Poland?
Poland? Let's see here. Let's
Turkey.
look at the... Honestly, I was about to say Poland and Germany. Those are pretty decent comparisons, actually.
Ooh, Germany, man. Germany is kicking it GDP-wise, man. Like, they are going to beat the Poles. But... yeah, I mean, it's not even a contest because the Polish GDP is around 700 billion. The Germans are at 4.3 trillion nearly. So it's a...
oh, well, yeah, never mind.
So let me try and show y'all Turkey. Turkey GDP. It's at 819 billion. So when we compare these two economies, Turkey is... it's very similar in kind of like the sphere that Poland's in. They're very strong economically for countries that aren't great powers, like, you know, Germany, Britain, France, the United States, and so on. But you wouldn't know that unless if you were really big into geopolitics or diplomacy. I think Ukraine's probably going to fall within that because Poland and Turkey, for many people, are looked at about the same. Pretty strong economies, actually, oddly enough. Well, actually, Turkey used to be a good bit stronger back in 2010. They didn't really recover from the recession at all, and that's been a bit of a thing in Turkey. But Poland's actually been doing fairly good. So, going off of that, that would have to be my answer. I don't really think Ukraine is going to be in a sphere like, well, in a realm like Germany or South Korea, because they're kind of on another level. They would kind of be within the gang of GDPs that are less than $1 trillion, but still considered very good and strong economies. And let me go show y'all Ukraine's GDP, just to give y'all an idea of what their economy looks like. 200 billion US dollars a year. So, you know, you can kind of get an idea. They got a little bit to go, and also, my God, rip the Ukrainian economy from 2013 to 2015. It went from 190 billion to 90 billion, literally a shrink of 50%.
That's a big drop. I was about to say if that coincided with the plague coming around, because that looks like the same graph. Well, not GDP, that's a stock market, totally different thing. Scrap that.
Yeah, this actually came around with the loss of the Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts to the rebels, and also the Russian annexation of Crimea. This is where their GDP dropped to. But then it actually rebounded pretty well in the following years, even up to the pre-2013 numbers. But Ukraine's economy has been actually having a really rough time, mostly to being involved in the Russian sphere up until about 2014 and even afterwards. So hopefully the war will start to change that. Because certainly before that, from 2000, where their GDP was at 31.5 billion, all the way up until 2008 when the recession happened, they got all the way up to 188 billion. They were skyrocketing up to that point. But another thing that you'll notice is that many countries after the recession of 2008 have not fared well. Poland started to go into a state of economic stagnation for a good bit after 2008. So did Turkey. Turkey actually fell pretty much straight off the charts and never really recovered too well. And Ukraine kind of did a similar thing as well in 2008 to 2009. But they were more so tied to the Russian economic sphere at that point, so it didn't affect them as greatly as it did other countries. But beyond that, one country that has actually done really well after the 2008 recession is the United States. You can notice that this is where the 2008 recession happened. you can kind of tell we weren't affected like many other nations.
Just a
around
blip
the
on the
world.
map.
Yeah, I mean that's what kind of puts it into perspective. When people go 2008 ruined America, I'm like, no, it didn't, because if you look at other countries, they never recovered from it, or they are having a really hard time recovering from it. Here in America, it was literally just like a road bump going down the interstate. We just kept going.
Wait, there was a dip in GDP on the plague in America. Like I thought it was just the stock market that was affected, but actually there was a dip.
Actually, yeah, I think that might be
That's the plague.
Yeah, that is 2020. But then we went on up, and also looks like the Chinese are starting to catch up a pretty good speed. But they're actually saying that the Chinese GDP is going to start rapidly slowing over the next 10 years. This is already slowing pretty quickly at the moment, so they may not ever actually catch up to America. It may be a lot like the Soviet Union through the 1940s to the 60s, where it looks like they were going to catch up to America because they were rapidly growing during those decades, but then they never did because it dropped off pretty quickly, and then they went into straight recession after that. But with that, I hope that does address that question about the Ukrainian GDP and their economic standing in the world post-war fairly well, at least from what I know. But, you know, it is pretty wild, Matthew, to look at a chart like this and watch a country like Japan pretty much flatten out from 1995 on. China rapidly growing, and then America just keeps up a continuous growth rate through everything. You know, and the very few blips or dips like other countries have gone through, like Turkey, Poland, or Ukraine.
Yeah, there's simply no better market to invest in from a an investing standpoint than America. It's just consistent growth over time, and even though it does have its dips in it, there's no unusual fluctuations. Like it doesn't suddenly rise and fall, or it doesn't fluctuate very often. So it's a very stable market. Unlike China, China had a sudden rapid growth, but now you're seeing that bubble that they created artificially starting to burst. It just doesn't pay off in the long run to try to do that.
You know something interesting? I was looking at this a second ago with the growing population numbers in Mexico. Probably a really good place for the United States to consider moving Chinese industry, because it's already happening. And it looks like a decent amount of companies are doing it, is moving them into Mexico. Because it looks like their GDP is starting to take a pretty good climb. I mean, it's not like the best, it's not like an American climb or anything, but it's taking a fairly good climb, and with a growing population and hopefully the quashing of the cartels, although that's going to be really tough, and they're working on it, but, that's a pretty uphill battle, especially with how severe the cartel issue is in Mexico and a lot of Central and South America at the moment. That might be a good place for American industry to move outside of China, is to Mexico.
I say bring it right back from China right back to America. Shouldn't have gone over there in the first place, and it should be right back over here. And it's I'm not saying to screw Mexico over or anything like that, because we trade with them a good bit. But the majority of the industry should be domestic. It shouldn't be outsourced overseas.
But the reality is, in this kind of a world, it could really never come back to America, because American goods, due to all the regulations we have and the wages that we have to pay factory employees, it's so high. American goods are no longer competitive on an international market, and that's why they moved to China and overseas in the first place, is because they had to try and lower the cost per unit on whatever was being manufactured, so that way they could actually be competitive on an international sphere. So they probably would never come back to America, and that's why I'm, not even really considering that as an option, because a lot of companies would never choose to do that, just because it would make them completely uncompetitive in every market outside of an American one. So, I mean, Mexico is a pretty good option, and on top of that, it would continue to grow our relations with the Mexicans, and on top of that, think about this, this is actually a pretty big benefit. If we help to bolster the Mexican economy by moving American industry there instead of a place like China or Vietnam, maybe that kind of economic stability would be what Mexico is looking for, to be able to give them that extra little push in crushing the cartels.
I don't know. I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but I'm not sure if you ever crush the cartels out of Mexico. Their entire system of government is not stable nor aggressive enough to really keep the cartels out. And really, I really can't fault them for that, because the cartel has a grip on Mexico, and they use a ton of violence, like, as everybody knows, with all their guns, and they have basically small military forces which rival the government. And how do you quash that? Because they've allowed so many cartels to take hold. It's like they've created a mess that they really can't get out of now, unless literally somebody else comes in, like the United States, and helps them wipe them out. But I don't even think the U.S. is willing to wipe them out, because I think they have some influence here in America as well.
A little bit, but we end up putting all the cartel bosses here in America whenever they get arrested because they can't escape. So apparently not that much of a connection, but still, this is something really interesting to me. Let me go over here really quick and grab this. Let's see here, trade balance. Okay, this isn't prioritized by number. I gotta go get. So this is something I actually pulled up, is I saw a lot of people saying this, and this may be true at this point, but in 2021 it wasn't the case. Here is the amount in billions of dollars traded, the biggest importers to the United States by country. China at 536 billion, Mexico at 456 billion.
Damn.
That's actually shocking. Mexico almost imports as much as the Chinese do to the United States.
I gotta say, Mexico is a very hardworking country. I will say that. But at the same time, though, I believe there has to be some type of solution. I understand what you're saying about the goods not being competitive on an international market because of the wage costs and production costs and all that domestically. But I think there's enough of a market in the United States to sell basically in a closed economy here to be able to support industry coming back. And we can still export overseas. And people should understand that they're getting a much higher quality product than they would be getting from China if it comes from the United States versus there. Because our manufacturing processes are, in my opinion, better than China. Even though China has a very strong manufacturing base, it's simply not as quality as what we can do.
Yeah, that's true. I would agree with that. It would be the perfect ideal scenario that U.S. industry and U.S. manufacturers will return to the States. But also, another point furthering that idea, Matthew, that Born in Ukraine brought up was the avocado deal, where the cartels took over the avocado farms because it was such a lucrative business.
Yeah, it's like that's really unfortunate. Well, it's not up to America to solve Mexico's problems. Like, I got to say it up front, but I'm sympathetic though, because when you see the Mexican farmers working hard to make the avocados, grow them and stuff like that, and then you see the thugs roll in and literally steal the avocados while they're trying to sell them. It's like that pisses me off, even though it's not really our problem to even see that happening. It's like, the Mexican government really doesn't have a grip on any of it.
Well, hear me out. Wouldn't this would be an interesting idea? What if the U.S. Army, and I'm just, brainstorming here. This isn't anything that I'd say we should actually do. What if the U.S. Army did what we did back in 1916, and we do a little bit of army intervention against the cartels in Mexico, of course with the Mexican government's support and, blessing, but we did that back in the day. It ended up not doing that badly either. We ended up almost getting Pancho Villa, which was the early 20th century equivalent to El Chapo. We ended up almost getting the guy, and we ended up crushing a lot of the kind of the cartels that existed at the time near the U.S. border. Maybe we could try and repeat something like that again. I don't know. That's. I don't know if the times are the same. That was the early 20th century. Things were looked at very differently with how we could go around and do things like that. But it would certainly help to bring stability not just to the United States. It would certainly help out with Mexico, which is a pretty big, it actually is our biggest trading partner at this point. On top of that, it's a country that we've always had a pretty decent amount of dealings and relations with, for good or for better. But anyways, hope that does address that well. And with that, I think we are on to the final question of the night, Matthew.
All right. And also, before we move off this topic, I have to say that I strongly believe this. I want to make a point before we get off the point. If we brought back manufacturing from China and overseas back to America, I believe the cost would rise. And that's really not an opinion. That's more of a fact. The cost would rise because of the wages and all the stuff we previously mentioned. But let me know in the live chat if you think that the Western world would either not buy our goods because of the costs, or would they adjust and slowly start buying those goods from us domestically again if we brought that all back to the United States, and understanding that they're supporting the Western way of life, or are they going to look solely at the economics of it and still buy the cheap goods from China and the cheaper manufacturing countries? That's a question. I'm kind of leaning toward they'd keep buying the cheap goods, but at the same time, if the West truly believes what we say we believe, which is we support democracy, then why are we going to keep economically supporting a communist country and all these countries which are not democracies, which simply have cheap wages? We're not putting our money where our mouth is. Basically, what I'm trying to say.
And I would agree. But Terrence Custer is right. Consumers always choose the cheaper product. That is always
That's true.
where it
That's
goes.
true.
And that's the thing
Yeah.
about being competitive. You have to be able to produce a massive amount of cheap, decent, like semi-decent quality products, and that's how you end up actually being competitive out there in the international market. Like a closed economy would be great, but you also have to remember that closed economies always lead to economic stagnation and decline, a lot like the Soviet Union's closed economy did. It was the major thing that led to the Soviet Union's eventual downfall, is that due to their lack of being able to trade internationally in any large way, they went into stagnation, and then their economy started to go into decline, because there has to be a constant input and output of goods in your country to other countries, and also receiving from them, to actually be able to make some kind of forward economic progress. So you have to be able to be competitive, and that's something that I just don't think will ever be possible in the United States again. And we also have to remember, the economy in the United States has moved on. It's moved on from a manufacturing economy to a service industry economy, which is it's a huge change. It's like going from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy. And that's really what the Chinese are at the moment, is that they are an industrial economy. They're not a post-industrial economy like we are. So that kind of industry that we're talking about bringing back to America, our economy isn't really formed to really be conductive to that anymore. Other economies are, they're still developing, like Mexico, China, Vietnam, and that's why all of these manufactories are moving to these nations, because they're still in an industrial era. They haven't moved on to the post-industrial era like America has. The Chinese actually are at the moment. That's something fairly interesting to talk about. The Chinese are at the moment, and that's why a lot of companies like Apple are actually starting to shut down some of their factories and move them to places like Mexico, is because the Chinese economy is starting to shift where it's no longer conducive to industrial manufacturing. It's more so of a post-industrial service-based economy. So
why can't we simply just shut off all Western trade with China? I mean, what would be the problem with that? Let China deal with their similar countries like Russia. Let them trade amongst themselves, because if they're all going to be communist and dictatorships, let them fail on their own. Why are we going to keep trading with them and supporting them when we could easily, between Europe and the United States, Canada, and Mexico, support ourselves?
yeah, I mean, honestly, like my great vision would be, if this was possible, to work with the Canadians and the Mexicans to create the most amicable trade environment in America that could exist. Kind of like what was it called, Matthew? Before this one that we have, the CUM.
NAFTA?
Yeah, NAFTA, kind of like that, but even better. So that way, it is such a competitive international market, especially with Mexico, because Mexico would really be the one to carry this, because they're still an industrial economy. The United States and Canada are more so post-industrial economies that wouldn't be able to support that kind of industry. But make sure that the Mexicans are so competitive that businesses would rather produce their goods and ship them into America from Mexico than to do it in China, because that will be making sure to deprive our rival, the Chinese, of their ability to have any kind of sway on the American market, and it will move it to a country that we're on much more better terms with, and on top of that is here in the Americas, which is Mexico. I think that would honestly be a much more solid move. And then eventually Mexico, due to that massive amount of industrial manufacturing that they'll then be doing, their economy will probably end up doing so well that then they'll start to morph from an industrial economy to a post-industrial one, and then from there we'll have to figure out who's the next country that's going to become the industrial powerhouse.
I think really, I think honestly, the West would not do my idea by cutting off China and just trading amongst ourselves in Europe, because I think that the West is somewhat scared that that would drive China closer to our adversaries and drive them all together, and would maybe cause them to maybe want to go to war, get more aggressive, because that they're hurting economically. That could be one reason. And also another reason is, like I said a moment ago, it could be the West really doesn't put its money where its mouth is, and they're purposely taking advantage of China's lax environmental regulations and also their lower wages, and they really don't, basically give a damn.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of true. Also, one thing that y'all may not know is that China has imposed unbelievably heavy tariffs on anything that is being shipped from the United States to China. It is economically infeasible due to the sheer size of the tariff that they impose on our goods. to be a viable company producing stuff in the United States and shipping it into China. Meanwhile, the United States doesn't really have any tariffs at all on Chinese goods imported to the United States. So it's a very kind of a predatory tariff system that we have in between the two countries at the moment. And that is something that kind of gives the Chinese a lot of credence to abuse the trading relation that we have with them. And that's something that you shouldn't really support that much in the long term, especially considering that it's benefiting a national rival. But that is the situation at the moment. It hasn't really changed either throughout the decade since 2001 when China joined the World Trade Organization, which is what allowed them to be able to have access to such low U.S. tariffs on imported goods. But beyond that, I hope that does address that well. That's like a whole other story for a whole other time. But anyways, we have to get on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be Viosta. But first, a big shout out to Elder Media, who threw in a $100 donation to the fundraiser, and also Mr. S, who threw in a $50 as well, and brought us up to $4,481, which is $4,500 almost. Very tremendous, and thank you both very much for that. And Viosta's question, and the last one of the night, is: did you hear that Zelensky signed a decree acknowledging Russian territories historically populated by Ukrainians? And this means reclaiming the truth about our past for Ukraine's future, he said.
And I would have to say I have not heard about that decree, actually. It kind of is out of the scope of the actual fighting of the war, and that's probably why I haven't heard about it. But that is pretty interesting to hear. And I think that certainly is going steps forward to reclaiming a Ukrainian identity, which has existed for thousands of years and is completely separate from the Russians. Because, you know, a lot of people took Putin's history lesson at face value, which was bogus, because the first real proto-Rus group to existed in the area of Kiev. The Kievan Rus, which was founded by Vikings who actually were traveling through the northern area of Europe from the Baltics down through Belarus and Poland and on into the area of the Dnipro River where it is today. They ended up settling there, and that's where the first Rus cultural group would form, and it would be the Kievan Rus. Their center was in Kiev. It ended up stretching out a pretty good bit. I think it was about as far over as Kharkiv and a lot more west than where it even exists today. It was kind of into Poland, Romania, and Slovakia and Hungary a little bit. And holy moly, Eldar Media threw in $500, getting the fundraiser up to $5,000.
Tremendous. I got to say, Elder Media wanted to hear his name a second time in bold fashion. I'm telling you, I'm having a huge voice crack there.
Man, and Elder Media said, let's make it even. Let's make it even. It is very close to being even. It's about $14 away at this point from being an even $5,000. So if someone throws in a $14 donation, it'll be $5,000 exactly at this point. But
if we get to 5,000 even, we need to pull up the marmot real quick. Like, that needs to be the going out gift, the marmot.
Yeah. And also, getting back to the history lesson real quick, because, you know, I, too, a lot like Putin, could give you a 30-minute history lesson, but mine will actually be accurate. The Ukrainians actually the Rus at the time, the Kievan Rus, which is the proto-culture that created Ukraine and Russia, really only exists in Ukraine. The farthest out they started to reach by about the 12th century was out to the areas around Tula and Kaluga. This area was mostly like just random tribal people, and we just made it 5K, by the way, y'all. The anonymous donor just got us over 5K. But when the Mongols arrived, to put this into a short lesson, the Mongols arrived from the east, going across the steppes, and ended up making it to Ukraine and modern-day Russia. When they made it there, the Mongols demanded that if these folks paid tributes to the Mongols, they would spare them and not kill them. The groups of the Kievan Rus that were more so in modern Russia, kind of around the Tula and Kaluga area, and also all of the tribes people up here in the area around Nizhny Novgorod, they ended up agreeing and paying the tribute. But the actual seat of power of the Kievan Rus here in the city of Kiev refused. And the Mongols ended up obliterating the Ukrainian population, the Kievan Rus' Ukrainian population in this area, and also ended up burning almost all of these places to the ground, pretty much wiping them out as a culture and a people. And all of the remaining Kievan Rus ended up centralizing a lot of their power in the areas in between Moscow and Nizhny Novgorod up towards St. Petersburg. And that was what was the actual split, where the Kievan Rus turned into the Ukrainians and the Russians. But once again, the real birthplace of both cultures is in Ukraine, and Ukraine is kind of the prototypical base default culture of the region, historically as a start. The Russians were kind of an offshoot of that culture and ended up growing to be a larger one for certain reasons. But beyond that, that is the actual origins. It's not the one that Putin said, because Putin actually told a different story where the origins of Russia were actually in Nizhny Novgorod, which is an area of northern Russia, from the area of St. Petersburg all the way out into the area around Veliki Ustyug out here. This area was what was called Nizhny Novgorod, and that's where he says the beginning of Russia began. But Nizhny Novgorod really didn't have a lot to do with the formation of modern Russia. It more so was Moskva itself, or Muscovy as it was called at the time. It was a small like Tsardom Principality kind of a state that was a break-off of the Kievan Rus culture or nation that was destroyed by the Mongols in the 13th century invasion. That was really what was the beginning of Russia. And Muscovy would actually end up taking over Nizhny Novgorod and creating Russia as it is today. But once again, that's an offshoot of Ukraine, and therefore Ukraine more so has a historical claim to the Russian Federation than the Russian Federation will have to Ukraine. But, you know, the world doesn't work off of historical claims like that are thousands of years, well, 1,000 years old. That's absolutely insane. But we have to round out tonight's stream with that answer, because we have passed $5,000, and the chat wants blood. They want the marmot, and we are gonna give it. Hang on, let me make sure that I have it like all zoomed in and everything already. Oh, hello there. Hey, it's the friggin'
rock?
Would you like some rock?
I was watching the Super Bowl and I was smoking a bowl.
Eat rocks.
Hey, Brad, I heard the Swifties are out there on the football field.
Oi, bruv, the KC won the Super Bowl, yeah? Oh, man. Oh, man. I have 6 people listening to me, and they don't like you. Who cares?
Lovely, man. This was the best way to round the stream out with the marmot.
Aw, man. I'm going to give you a thinly veiled death threat. Do it then, you weak. you weak man.
Do it then, you wanker.
Do it then, you wanker. Wait. Hey! What does that taste like? What does it taste like? That tastes like a promotion. Oh, man.
That tastes like the sweet smell of defeat.
What is that? What does that look like? What does it look like? It looks like channel death. Oh!
Notice the headlock, good sir. Notice the headlock. Notice the technique here, good sir.
Oh, man. Get your hands off my... Oh, man. Goodness gracious. Well, on that note, folks, on that wild note of the night, it's time for us to round out tonight's stream. I got to thank all of you so much once again for watching tonight, being a part of this stream. And it was great to see everyone come in after the Super Bowl ended. We were actually wildly concerned tonight about that. But beyond that, I'm so happy that we were able to share the news with each and every one of y'all, and not only that, surpass $5,000 raised on the fundraiser. That was truly incredible. It blew us away. We didn't think we would raise $5,000 on a Super Bowl night of all nights, but the Lee Spring Army is truly a machine. It is greater than any sports game. It is greater than any group on the internet. It is undefeated, unbeatable, and uncontested to be the greatest community in the internet, and tonight y'all all proved it and showed it once again. The Lee Spring Army will truly never die, and I hope to tell y'all something that will really excite y'all for the future. Coming up after the 2nd year anniversary of the war in Ukraine, about 27 days after that, after this massive momentous occasion that we'll be having here very soon, it will be the 2nd year anniversary of the founding of the Lee Spring Army. Which is a very big deal, because we are actually going to be unveiling the flag of the Lee Spring Army that day. We are actually going to have an official flag moving forward from that point, and I'm also going to be working on getting some very special artwork in the form of pictures commissioned for the Lee Spring Army that will include the flag and a whole bunch of other symbols. We may even try and come up with, like, the way a Lee Spring Army soldier will look like, at least for painting form, so that way we can get y'all out a whole new line of merch, maybe on LSA Day, or maybe after LSA Day. But I'll be getting that out for y'all. We'll probably be releasing those as soon as they're done on Patreon, and then it'll be rolled out to the rest of the general discerning public of the Lee Spring Army that is truly invincible and legendary. And so with that, I will see you all on Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. Thank you all for another great fundraiser tonight. And of course, we'll see you on Tuesday night. Slava Ukraine, Heroem Slava, and the Lee Spring Army shall never die.
Yeehaw!
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.